is 6:34,
Okay.
and I'm going to call this meeting of the Marvin Village Planning Board to order at, as I said, 6:34. We do have a quorum. We have myself, Melinda, Kelly, and Michael. That makes 4.
We are missing
So-
Parag Patel, Mark Peterson, and Kent Renner.
All right. Has everyone reviewed the agenda? Any questions, comments, changes?
Can we make it shorter? That's why no one else is here.
It all depends on you.
I have something to say during the meeting, but I think I'll just hold it till the end when y'all are doing board member comments, just to keep it simple.
Okay, all right.
Then do you want to ask your question, or do you have the answer to your question before the meeting?
You might as well ask the question, the question you had, so that everyone can know.
Yeah, sure. You want me to just explain what I just answered?
Yeah, I had asked Rohit a question regarding line item, what, 4?
4 and consent agenda.
In the consent agenda, where it was removing the definition.
Yeah, we have removing the definition of accessory use dwelling, but then we have to add back the definition of dwelling unit, dwelling, building, and other things, as the state is requiring municipalities to have the same definition for various things. So in items of discussion number 6, I adjusted some parts of our code so that despite the slightly different definitions, the application is the same as it was before.
Okay. That was in case anybody had raised that question. I didn't know how it was going to be covered, but it's deleted in the consent agenda. It's readdressed in the items of discussion.
Right,
So, and we'll get to that then.
right.
All right. So, no questions, changes to the agenda, except a motion to adopt.
So moved.
That was
Kelly.
Kelly. Seconded by Melinda. All in favor? Motion passes.
Awesome.
Adoption of the minutes for 420 meeting. Any corrections or changes to those minutes? Seeing none, and I didn't have any, except a motion to adopt as presented.
So moved.
Melinda. All right, second. Michael. All in favor? Unanimous. We signed this before I forget.
Thank you.
I guess we're just all have to rotate. Who's gonna make communications and everything.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
All right. Now, moving forward now, we have the public comment period.
Okay.
We have,
We do have people signed up. Okay, so I'm just going to go in order on the sheet. First is Andrea Marsh of 920 Wandering Way Drive.
make a, initial comment, you've got,
Oh yeah, I'll give them the rules of it.
yeah,
You,
you do
have,
that.
you have 3 minutes to speak. It's not a discussion, so there's no back and forth. But you have 3 minutes to speak on what you're here to speak about, and if I don't think that applies in the situation. So yeah, you have 3 minutes.
Just so it's easier to put it up.
Oh,
now
you're good.
front then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're good. I'll do that.
So I am a resident of Marvin Creek, which is adjoining the estates at Marvin Branch that's upcoming, and had some concerns regarding the current plan.
No, they can't hear you.
They can't hear.
Okay.
Yeah.
You may want to go.
Maybe.
Yep.
Okay, my name is Andrea Marsh. I'm a resident of Marvin Creek, and We are neighbors adjoining the proposed development of the estates at Marvin Branch, and we have reviewed the proposed plans and have some initial concerns, some of which have been modified so far with regards to the entryway and the setbacks. In addition, we had some concerns along the adjoining of the other lots regarding drainage and a small stream that is a part of the entryway that slopes down towards the property, and the tree coverage or for privacy barrier along the back. Also wanted to propose that as part of maintaining the integrity of the natural landscape, if the large boulders that are currently on the site be kept as part of the, I guess, landscaping and design in the neighborhood, just to preserve some natural elements. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, next up we have Janet. How do you pronounce your last name?
Jeanette.
Jeanette, okay.
I'm Janet Jeanette. I live in Marvin Creek. The back of our lot does adjoin to the new Marvin Branch development proposed. We have concerns because there's a tree buffer behind several of our lots, and there are existing trees. It's our understanding that these trees would be preserved by the homeowners association and or the people who buy the home buyers. So we have a concern that the builder at some stage of the lot grading may go and destroy some of these or change some of these trees, and that would change our view in the back, which has been ours for 8 or 10 years, and several people. Also, the drainage in any potential new neighborhood, because the Mile Creek is so close, we would probably like to know a little bit more about how the water will drain, although it's been told to us it's going to drain all in one direction toward the creek. And then lastly, the homes themselves, I guess it's been told to us what types of homes those would be and the size of the homes, but I guess we're concerned with how this neighborhood will play out, and there is an agenda or a timeline of about a year or so, but it does seem like this is all happening very fast, and that we just all knew about it about two weeks ago, and many times it takes much longer. My most recent request was as of yesterday, where there's a second development plan and there are no new square footages on those lots. It's impossible for this new plan to have correct square footages on the lots after they have just adjusted for setbacks and for the road adjustment. So I am requesting that we get new square footages, because that will determine how many square feet the lots behind us actually have. And that's all I have today.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up we have Nikhil Sawant. Did I even get that close?
You got it exact, actually. Thank you for doing that. So good afternoon or good evening rather, Nikhil Sawant. Just like the two women before me, I'm also a part of the residents of Marvin Creek, and I was in the first house adjoining the proposed new subdivision at estate at Marvin Branch, basically. So similar to what the other folks have talked about, wanted to make sure that I have three pages to submit as exhibit. Can I do that, or may I do that? I can.
As part of his public comments, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Included
included in the comments. So the first one is that there are certain tree buffers at the beginning of the subdivision would allow if you guys could maintain it or have the builder maintain it as much as we can potentially. So that's one. The second one is that, as you can see here, some of the privacy between the two, the estate is Marvin as well as our lot, for example, is thinning out quite a bit. So if you could have the builder put in some additional tree coverage in this lot itself, maybe the other owners within the subdivision may not want it, but at least for us, we wanted to make sure that we put it in place, and that is right behind the 916 Wandering Way Drive, basically. Lastly, as we go towards the beginning of the subdivision, the tree cover actually moves away from the fence line. So wanted to make sure that those trees also remain as much as we can. So in a nutshell, if the builder could preserve as much as the natural foliage around the property, in and around 25 feet buffer or so, would definitely want to make sure that they are taking that into consideration. This is the third document in submission.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing the comments, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and now, does anyone on the WebEx wish to speak during the public comment period? So please unmute yourself. I don't think anybody up there.
Yeah,
actually
all of
is.
them are applicants.
Oh, okay.
And Tom.
All right.
So
You're good?
So I'll close the public comment period. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Move for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
That's Kelly. Second, Melinda. All in favor? All right. Thank you.
Consent agenda is adopted.
Consent agenda is adopted. Now, get down into the meat of things. Items of discussion.
yes.
First item is discussion consideration of the Estates at Marvin Branch sketch plan.
All right. So I'll introduce this. So the 28.5 acre tract on Joe Carr Road, on the north side between Marvin Creek, the Brantley Farm, the 6 Mile Creek to the north, and Elysian Fields to the south. The developer is Jones Homes USA, and they are proposing 16 home subdivision on these 28 acres. That's a density of 0.56 units per acre, and there's also the DEQ buffer of 200 feet. That was a limitation when developing the Elysian Fields subdivision across the street, and the same limitation is here. In addition to the view shed, that's the only sort of exception. Everything else is within the guidelines and the regulations, and there are some things that can also be negotiated, but there's one exception. They're asking for that 85-foot view shed buffer, which is the lowest that we would allow, and to have the maximum on the other side because of the view shed, because of the DEQ buffer. That's the water quality for the protection of the heel splitter clam. Prohibits development on that side. In the agenda packet, I did include, as was requested last time, the minutes from the January 15th, 2008 meeting where the council discussed briefly the same request from Elysian Fields, and it was granted at that time. The argument was the same, that the DEQ buffer puts a burden of development on one whole side of the neighborhood, and so the reduction of the view shed buffer to 85 foot was found to be reasonable. And so like I said, I included those minutes in the packet. With that said, with us here tonight we have Mark from Land Design and Rob from Land Design, and we also have Ben from Jones Homes, who will be representing the project and answering any questions that I don't know the answer to, in addition to listening for the discussions of negotiation. And I think that's pretty much it. I'll turn it over to one of you guys, and you can explain anything.
Sure.
Ooh, that's loud. Hold on. All right.
So, good evening. My name is Mark Heim. I'm a landscape architect with Land Design. Robert Klaus, a civil engineer with our office as well. And I know some of you have attended the public information meetings on site, and we've had this project before the planning board previously. One of the biggest changes that I think we've made since the last iteration of the plan was to angle the entry road a little bit further to the west in order to gain as much distance between Marvin Creek as well as possible without encroaching into the 200-foot stream buffer. This allowed those lots to get a little bit farther, a little bit deeper, pulling them further away. The intention of this subdivision is to only build in the road network and then any minimal clearing. And if you've been out there, most of this is open field. We've got a 25-foot preservation perimeter within the 75-foot rear yard. That's where a lot of these existing trees are located that were mentioned during some of the public comment. Came up during the public information meetings as well. It's our intention not to clear anything that far into any of the lots. The buffer for Marvin Creek serves as a good buffer for these homeowners as well. So it's an added perk, that we don't have to even supplement that much with plantings just to maintain a nice visual screen that keeps everybody happy. So, as Rohit had mentioned, we are asking for the request from 285 down to 85 for the viewshed buffer. You can see the 200-foot stream buffer really impacted any yield from this site. So we understand that's the only request that we're making that's not in compliance with code. So we're looking forward to your consideration. Would ask or provide any if you have any questions or any feedback on that, we'd be happy to discuss. We're still providing the 30-foot greenway easement that will extend all the way from Joe Carr Road to the 6 Mile Creek stream, and as well as paralleling 6 Mile Creek with a stub up to Marvin Creek if Marvin Creek's HOA so desires to make that connection in that location. We'll bring that greenway to the edge of the property. Lastly, did get a response from NCDOT this week from Travis Pressler, and just looking at the off-site roadway improvements. We had suggested that the only thing we probably need to place out front on Joe Carr Road would be a right turn lane into the subdivision, and NCDOT did agree with that assessment. So, like I said, Ben Kuhn is also here to answer any questions. If you have any questions about the building types, square footages, etc. And we're here for any feedback and look forward for a positive recommendation going to council. So, thank you.
All right. I just want to clarify one thing. The exception to the viewshed buffer is specifically allowed in the ordinance. It's like not that they're seeking a variance, but rather the subdivision ordinance itself does lay out the procedure that, and for this one specific thing, that if the equation to calculate the minimum viewshed buffer is for some reason it's not conducive for the tract, then you can request an 85-foot buffer. You can request it be reduced to 85. So that is what the developer is proposing.
And that's only, along the eastern part. I think I'm right.
Right.
The
North
parcel.
is this way. That's up is east in this picture. So
Yeah.
just for that side, and then they would actually increase the viewshed buffer. Of course, they could have potentially built one house in this area, but they're not looking to do that. So they're having the maximum viewshed here, but it's kind of moot because the whole side of the street is pretty much unbuildable until the very back.
Yeah. Any questions from the board? If we need to go back to.
Oh, sure.
Okay, I've got a question. So I read the notes from when, and I appreciate you getting those, Rohit, about the discussion for the other development and why the easement was granted. And reading that, it says that the easement was granted because the decreased viewshed buffer was granted based on a hardship, and that by otherwise it was not financially feasible, and that it wouldn't be as profitable for the development that went in across the street. And I guess my question for, and this could be totally because I'm ignorant to it, so everybody feel free to jump in and correct me, but isn't that the same argument effectively that people would use to say if we could put 4 houses on an acre, it's going to be more economically feasible? Like, I don't understand how that is I mean, I can appreciate, don't get me wrong, I'm not necessarily immediately against your development, but my question is, how is not putting another almost $1 million house, I mean, that benefits, of course that benefits the developer, and of course, I would think if I was losing $1 million, I would consider that a hardship as well, but is it, for us as the town council, is going against this so that they can put in another $1 million home, is that a hardship? Maybe I don't understand the way hardship is supposed to be defined.
I think part of it, anybody jump in here, is that they, basically because of the watershed, setback, they've effectively lost half of the property. And so,
John, I mean, I hear you, but my question is that watershed was there before they bought the piece of property.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And it's not our job to make every piece of property more profitable and develop. And this is the same argument I've made about lots of these things, right? It's not our job to make the pieces of property. I mean, I don't know that y'all, like, I know that on our property, we only got one piece that perks. That's not the village's problem, right? I mean, I guess I just don't understand. We didn't add the creek since it was built or since the property was purchased.
I guess to start answering that question, the definition of hardship is related to peculiarity of the property, and it cannot be something that is caused by the applicant. So by those definitions, I would tend to agree that it would fall under the definition of hardship. And to further that kind of argument, the floodplain is where you're not allowed to build because it's not possible physically to build. If you build, I mean, you could build a house in a floodplain, but then it might flood. That line is actually much further in to the property than the, I don't want to call it arbitrary 200-foot buffer, but it's like, it's just a number that DEQ said. This particular waterway, you can't build 200 feet from it, and so what I've drawn in red is the floodplain. And so if this didn't have the DEQ buffer, then all of this area would have been buildable. But with the 200-foot buffer, that extends the unbuildable area, and it's like a regulatory limitation as opposed to a physical one. And of course, like I said, it's not something that was caused by the applicant. In another case, a person bought a lot, built it too far back to fit a pool, and then asked for a variance on the setbacks, and it was declined because that person built the house too far back. But in this case, the DEQ was the one that caused the hardship, not the applicant, so it's not as relevant that it existed before the applicant bought the property.
Yeah, I see it doesn't make you feel any better, but as far as a explanation perhaps.
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to our municipal definition of hardship.
Yeah.
And it's just in my analysis that it does meet that definition. And it was also in whoever was the planner's analysis in 2008 that they recommended it met that definition, and it came through the council and it passed at that time as well for Elysian Fields.
Kelly, Michael, any other
No, I
questions?
mean, I know where it was coming from, and I don't know if politics were in play back in the, back in the day, but, I'm also a fan of consistency. If you make a rule for one neighborhood, you can't change it for another, so, if that's the way, I mean, if it was a bad ruling and it's against our actual ordinances and policies, then I think we should do the right thing, but if it's in alignment with our ordinances, I don't, it is what it is.
Yeah,
Just the goodness is the
Go
issue.
back to road, I think the 85 is in,
Right.
conformance with the ordinance, right?
Right, and I can pull that ordinance up too if you want to look at it, but basically in the definition of viewshed buffer and the requirements, it does state specifically that the applicant can request to reduce it to 85. So in the world full of things related to development, this is like the only thing that was provided for, that if there's a hardship, you can just ask for it. You don't have to go through the variance process to circumvent other rules.
So Rohit, the 250-foot viewshed buffer is a standard for us?
There is an equation. The equation was 80 plus 5 times the number of acres. I didn't even really calculate this because they were offering the minimum on one side and the maximum on the other, but give me a second.
But they still meet the minimum requirement.
Well, 285 is the maximum. Regardless of the equation, 285 is the maximum and 85 is the minimum.
Yeah, I mean, even 85 is still a good buffer.
It's, especially if you consider, well, not even discussing Elysian Field, that's, nothing's been built yet other than the street. Marvin Creek has, how much?
Give me a second. Marvin Creek was built
Before the ordinance was.
before ordinances. I'll do some measuring, so. Let's see, that would be the back of the property, and roughly that would be the edge of the right of way. That's 50 feet?
Yeah.
Yeah. 50 feet was a pretty common view shed, for the county anyway, so that's what Marvin Creek is.
And will there be, trees added to this viewshed buffer, or is it just considered you can't touch it?
No, viewshed buffer just means you can't develop the houses and in it. There are quite a few things you can build in the viewshed buffer, and it's not required to be treed or bermed or anything else. There is, however, the minimum density of trees that we did find to be 1 per 2,500 square feet. Or, in a 25-foot buffer, that's 1 per 100 linear feet. So for the areas that are not at least that, they would have to fill that in. And that really applies to lot 16, primarily, because that's outside the existing tree buffer, so they would have to fill in 1 per 100 linear feet in that 25-foot buffer at least. In the viewshed buffer, like I said, they're not required to, but we did discuss that in the public involvement meeting, and they were amenable to doing that.
Okay, well, I mean, you also don't want to put too much in there because then the sight lines for turning out of, with all the speeding people driven on that road, that could be pretty dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's another question.
If, one last question, and this really has nothing to do with the developer, but, for the greenway, is the greenway gonna cross over to Eden Fields?
Yes, that's the intent. And the developer, we've also discussed having that crossing be at the road intersection to make that safer. This is where they put the easement. But actually, Mark, can you talk about that? Because you said it was your intention to build some of that as part of the subdivision, so you wouldn't actually need to give us an easement for it?
Yeah, I mean, we will dedicate the easement and plat it, but I mean, Jones is planning to actually build a natural trail system within that easement. I know we've talked about, yes, extending a concrete sidewalk up to the main crossing, so we can have all of our traffic in one spot versus have people mid-block trying to cross on that road.
Does NCDOT has control of Tom Shores, correct, or Joe Kerr?
Yes.
Yes. All right, my suggestion was going to be if they would let us, is instead of having the greenway where it is, but then maybe potentially raising the road up one of those kind of larger, bumps in the road, just to slow people down, but, have that be the piece that connects to greenways from Elysian to this. I don't know if NCDOT will let us do that. I'm just trying to think of things that'll slow people down.
Yeah, that is a good idea. That's always helpful. I think it would probably be the applicant's responsibility to see if DOT would allow that. That's
It would make the people who would eventually live there a lot safer getting in and out of their neighborhood.
Mark?
The only other question I have is in regards to grading and drainage. Because the area is so close to the creek, and that creek back there floods pretty badly sometimes. How are you guys going to grade the land, if at all? And then how are you gonna deal with runoff, so that there's not, a mosquito swamp in between,
Sure.
your development and Marvin Creek?
Well, so all of the drainage is falling on this sheet, basically north to south, but really from Marvin Creek down to the creek. So we wouldn't be pushing any water back towards Marvin Creek whatsoever. Our intention is to only grade pads and then to use natural drainage courses versus concentrating flow. That way, natural drainage courses where you're only picking up a lot or two and letting it naturally drain towards the creek through that buffer. That's going to be your best method for water quality, and it also doesn't concentrate flow, causing problems with flooding. So we really think, this is going to function very well as a low impact development when it comes to storage.
So technically, right now, as it stands, Marvin Creek is actually draining into this property.
That's correct.
It would take a lot for you guys to go the other way, so that makes me feel a lot better. Hopefully that makes the lady who was concerned about it feel better as well.
Yes, we would not be taking any water towards Marvin Creek.
That sort of, brought up a question in my mind, and maybe Rohit. So in order for it to sheet drain across, I assume there'll be no curb and gutter there so that it can drain across the street?
There will be curb and gutter, but there will be cuts in the curb and gutter for the stormwater to drain off of the road and through the natural course. There will be a standard subdivision will have lots of catch basins and piping.
Yeah.
We will have very little catch basins and piping and doing more of what I would call concrete flumes through the curb.
Okay.
We did a very similar subdivision like this in Weddington, and it functions very well as far as not having concentrated flow and not having the need to create a whole bunch of concentrated stormwater into a BMP. So we've had experience with this type of build. I feel very comfortable, especially with lots this size and the big side yards. It really lends itself to that kind of build in the first place.
And what about the boulders the woman, the other lady was talking about that are on the property? Are they in the way of construction? If not, you're welcome to bring them to my house. I'd be happy to.
As far as I know, and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, aren't they behind lot 16 in this area? Yeah, where Rohit's pointing.
Yes. Yeah, that's where those boulders were, and the adjoiner, I don't remember her name, that came to the public input meeting, had also made the same request, and we're more than happy to incorporate those some way into the landscape on that frontage, to make that stay and look kind of a natural area like it does now, not change their side yard views.
I believe that's in the view shed buffer anyway, so since
It is.
you're not allowed to build there anyway, it
Yeah.
would make a lot of people happy to keep those boulders. Paulette Carr was the lady that came.
Yes.
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 Great, thank you, gentlemen.
She also called me many months ago and made the same comment. She said, whenever you have that public input meeting,
Wasn't she the very first person to ever call about it?
yes, yes.
I wasn't
She
called.
said, make sure you give me a heads up so I can go tell them that. And she sure did.
It's obvious I didn't pay attention to the boulders being there.
They were outside the tree line. If you were looking from the inside, you might not have seen it.
Now, I'm going down Joe Carr.
Mm-hmm. Let's see if I can find them on Google. I'll try to find them.
I was, John, let me say something. I was at the public information meeting. These gentlemen did a very good job, answered all the questions. We had about 3 residents from Marvin Creek who joined us there. Did a very good job there. The only thing that I have, we may have already answered it. Oh, and one more thing, Paulette Carr was there and wanted to make sure that we all call it Joe Carr Road, not Joe Kerr Road.
Yes.
Her last name is Carr, not Kerr, so
Yeah.
just going forward. We all know about the flooding of the creek when we get massive rains. You're gonna put in homes where that water is flowing into the ground. Are you doing anything to decrease, or you're not doing anything at all? Should we still expect that to flood, or is there something you can do to prevent that going forward, since you're going to be directly impacting the creek by putting homes there?
Well, I mean, the drainage design that we're going with is, I mean, we're not gonna change the flow of drainage. So whatever water's going there now is still going to be going there. We're not concentrating the flow, so it's gonna sort of build up and flux in any one particular area. By having all these multiple swales and breaks within the curb, it kind of acts as a level spreader instead of having all the water in one area. It's essentially going to let it sheet flow as much as possible over that 200-foot stream buffer, which a 200-foot stream buffer is, a fairly significant area that, I mean, like I said, it's well outside the floodplain. It would take a unusual storm event to flood so far as to get anywhere, I think, near those homes. So, as far as the flood activity in the creek itself, I really can't speak to that other than there's already a floodplain present that we can't, disrupt.
Okay. But my point is that you're not going to change anything. I mean, when we put homes there, we have, 16 homes there? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's 16 homes that now will, the water can't flow into the ground, so we're going to actually have more water. So we should expect no change on Joe Carr Road when we have heavy rains.
No, I mean, this development will stay under the 24% threshold for low impact developments. I don't think we're anywhere actually even close to that, which, and Rob, if you want to, I don't know if you can speak to that anymore, but generally that's the state's rule of thumb for allowing this type of development, is keeping the impervious cover down. Even though we're converting some of these grass areas into impervious, it's not so significant that we expect it to impact the floodplain.
Yeah, I don't expect additional flooding in Joe Carr Road. We're still doing as little impact and impervious as possible, and like Mark said, actually not letting it all congregate into the bottom left-hand corner of this project, but spread it out so that it gets into the creek in different spots.
Well, I mean, the crossing at Joe Carr Road too is actually upstream of all the development that we're proposing. So anything on this site will be draining, I guess, on the page to like the southwest corner of the page versus anything at that particular crossing. So I wouldn't expect it to back up and cause any additional issue.
Change the subject some. I think you mentioned it, or did I understand? And I know we're showing a greenway easement. Did you say that you're actually going to develop that greenway in a natural path or something?
Yes, yeah, we're proposing to install it as a natural surface trail.
Any other?
I don't have anything further, John, thanks.
Melinda, Kelly? Any comments, questions? I can't see you.
I'm good. This is
Okay.
Kelly.
All right.
And at that, with that, there are still, I mean, the issue of the view shed, I guess that had to be recommended independently. In addition to the understandings that, through the course of this discussion, the developer would keep the boulders, preserve the tree buffer, increase the density of the trees to match our minimum density, and
The privacy trees in the tree buffer.
right. The trees that are not, including the trees that are outside of the 25 feet minimum, try to keep those as well because the developer is proposing they won't even go anywhere near that buffer.
Will they be required to increase the planting along that rear 25-foot buffer? I mean, as far as our ordinance?
Right, they would to meet our minimum density. Like
Yeah.
I mentioned, it is 1 tree per 2,500 square feet, or in other words, in a 25-foot wide buffer, that's 1 tree per 100 linear feet. So they would have to increase the tree buffer to maintain that that density, in addition to planting those trees behind lot 16 where there is the tree buffer doesn't exist there yet. They would have to plant trees there. Let's see.
Do you stipulate the kind of trees with the evergreens?
No, we don't require that they be evergreens. We do have a list of trees that include canopy and understory trees. It's a pretty good list. There's a lot of native trees in there, trees that do well.
Rohit, will we need to see a landscape plan at some point then?
Yes, that does actually bring me to a good point that was not discussed yet from the public comments, the speed of the process. This is actually a pretty normal procedure in that this is actually the first phase of 3 that the planning board and council will be looking at this subdivision. The 3 phases are the sketch plan phase, which we are in right now, the construction plan phase, and the final plat phase. And in the construction plan phase, that's when you'll see all of these more detailed factors, which include the landscaping, the exact sidewalk and road placement, the right turn lanes, the drainage, including the hydraulic analysis that confirms the ability of the sheet flow to not increase the
runoff.
the runoff outside the property, and the exact locations of swales and flumes and cuts. So that's again, just to clarify for everyone that, once again, this subdivision will be seen by the planning board and council, and once again, the public, general public will be able to have their chance to make public comments at both meetings, and even at that time, the planning board and council can request revisions at that more detailed level.
Anything, all right, so we will need a couple
Right.
motions.
Right. One additional, other than the motion to either recommend approval or denial of the sketch plan, a motion to recommend approval or denial of the view shed buffer.
And
So,
which,
Do you want to give them a draft motion?
which order, I guess, first?
yeah,
You know,
I
the
would,
view
I would
shed?
go with the view shed first.
Yeah,
Just motion to recommend, approval or denial, whichever you want to choose, of the reduction of the view shed buffer to 85 feet on the east side.
east side of the proposed
property.
street.
Yes.
So I will make that motion
Motion to approve or deny.
to approve is, including, the view 85 foot to the east side. Is there a second?
I'll second it, John.
All right. Further discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3,
Melinda votes against.
and,
Melinda voted
and
against.
you're against, Melinda, okay. So the vote is based on our quorum tonight?
It's who's here, yeah, so 3-1, the motion
Yeah,
passes.
Motion passes based on 3-1. All right. Now,
And the next motion would be to recommend approval of the sketch plan, either as presented or with modifications.
with the notes,
Right, with notes, if you want to, again, include in your recommendation, as you would in your motion, the notes that were discussed about keeping the boulders, increasing the tree buffers, and planting them around lot 16. And keeping the trees. I'm sorry?
Sorry, I was gonna make the motion, but I wasn't sure if you were done. It was very long tonight.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, that's,
and
That's
we don't
the
have
summary
to
of it.
accept these if you don't want to
Right.
include that in your motion.
Is this,
I actually would like to include those notes in the motion.
Okay.
I think it would help neighbors to feel more comfortable with the development going forward. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the sketch plans with the notes discussed. Anything else I have to say?
the motion needs to have the words in it. It's Rohit, you can read the notes,
Sure,
and she can
sure.
say so moved.
with the recommendations to keep the boulder, not disturb the tree buffer, increase the density of the trees to match our ordinance, and plant trees around lot 16.
Could you put 15 and 16, because we don't have the specifications right now.
Okay, let me just say to plant trees around lots that don't have enough screening.
Okay.
Do I have to repeat that, or can I say?
You
add
can
a
say so.
statement?
You can say
Yeah.
so moved.
So moved.
Because Rohit's been
So-
taking notes.
Right,
Uh,
I'll pass the notes to Austin.
We'll need a second for the motion that's pending.
Yeah, we need a second. Michael? All in favor? 3. Melinda is a nay.
Rohit, for the benefit of everyone here, would you explain what's left in this process?
Sure. Planning board is an advisory board, so the recommendations will go to council. Council then has the liberty to discuss the entire sketch plan in addition to planning board's discussions and recommendations. And at that time, there will be another opportunity to make public comments that the council would also likely consider in their discussions. And finally, with an approval of a sketch plan, if council decides to approve the sketch plan as presented or modified, then the applicant would then go on to create a construction plan, which once again will be reviewed by the planning board, the council, our engineers, and all other outside applicable agencies like DOT and DEQ and Public Works. At that time, there will be a lot more details discussed. The sketch plan phase, of course, is just kind of a higher up level of, in concept, what this subdivision is. So that answers your question, Austin?
Yep.
For the record.
Sure.
Okay, so that closes
Yep.
item number 1 on items of discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, item 2, discussion and consideration of 7-Eleven at Marvin Gardens construction plan.
Okay. Give me one
Do you,
half a
do,
minute.
do you need a recess?
That would be nice.
5 minute recess?
Yes.
Motion for 5 minutes?
Motion for a 5-minute recess.
I'm curious to see if that's.
So move. Melinda, all in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Do we have
Yeah, do we have the people back?
everybody back?
Michael.
Michael, are you back?
There we go.
Okay, I'd like to
I'll probably
Just
go
reconvene.
around video, I'm back.
reconvene the Marvin Planning Board meeting. All right. Next item, discussion consideration of 7-Eleven at Marvin Gardens construction plan.
All right. So try to walk and talk at the same time. That usually doesn't work out. But 7-Eleven is a phase of the Marvin Gardens individual conditional district. It's proposed to go in out parcel 1, which is the only out parcel that is approved for this type of use. So the construction plan is in the packet. After all the process we discussed in the subdivision process, in this individual conditional district, the sketch plan is actually an administrative level review. So we did that. Between Tom and I, we found a long list of applicable things in the ordinance that follows in your packet. And with a round of revisions, they were able to amend the things that we found that were non-compliant. This covered all sorts of different things, from the building materials, the amount of glass they're allowed to have, the setbacks, landscaping, the sidewalk they did add in the second round, and signage, which I'm sure they may shed a tear, but they're not allowed to have the red and orange in their signage except for the logo itself. So the gas station signage, that's why you see that there aren't the 7-Eleven orange, green, white striping, because we don't allow anything other than green, white, black, and bronze in this district except for the logo itself. So you'll notice that if you look through the signage plan. Of course, the text amendment to allow 12 pumps. I have to be careful to.
12 hoses.
Yeah, what's the wording that you use for
Fueling stations?
fueling stations?
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
It's,
6
Six.
stations, 12 pumps.
6 stations,
200.
12 pumps. I keep getting those things mixed up. I know what they are, but it's not common vernacular, you know. I mean, not. Anyway, with that said, the only other things I did mention in the packet that would need to be discussed independently, the wayfinding signs are a district-wide rule that wayfinding signs have to be discussed separately as the design review board, so that's the next item. And then, since then, the 7-Eleven folks have decided not to deal with the outside propane tanks, which was in the memo, according to the applicant, so that would not need to be discussed. The reason it would have been needed to be discussed is that this district doesn't allow outdoor sales except for Publix. But they've decided to not pursue that any longer. So the rest of it's pretty. The rest of it's all there laid out. The ordinance is there. The construction plan is there, and even after planning board and council, our engineer will also have to review it and make any remarks and revisions. But we figure at least get it, through the administrative section, and then, let the engineer make their more specific comments. That's what we did with the Publix as well. So with that, I will introduce the applicants that are here. Kathleen Rose is here in person, and Danielle is here from Kimley Horn to represent the engineering side of the packet. Is there anyone else?
Lorraine Tucker.
Oh, Lorraine
the
Tucker is also
developer.
here
Mhm.
to represent.
For 7-Eleven, yeah.
Okay, so I guess with that, I'll let you take it away. You can go ahead and explain anything else that you wanted to say that I haven't covered.
We appreciate everybody's time and attention again, and this is our third time through, as you mentioned, text amendment, the sketch plan review.
It's a gauntlet.
It's yes, it's. I'm just happy to be here in person, actually. So we have had several revisions and gone through this and addressed all of the comments that Rohit and the team and his team had. We made a lot of revisions, not only in the signage, but landscape plan, building plans. I think we sent a materials board. Did you get that?
Yes, I did. It's in my office.
Okay, well, if anybody wants to see it, go to Rohit's office.
Oh, no, I'll pull it out right here.
So we provided all of that information. It will have the same kind of vernacular and feel as the Publix, to keep that consistency, obviously. So with that, I guess I'll just entertain any questions. There is a fair amount of landscaping on the plan, and the site, just so you know, it sits on the corner of Newtown and the little side road off of Newtown, the entranceway up, and it's about I'm guessing, so I'm not an engineer, but it's about a 5% grade. So this site will sit up a little bit on the hill, which is why we're having the signage conversation, because there already are street trees along Newtown and that other area, as well as it sits up against, it's inward facing, so it faces in toward the public parking lot, not out into the into the intersection, and it's really buffered by that retention basin that has a pretty high wall with a fencing around it, so this building will sit all up behind that. So, which is why, we had asked some of those changes in signage just from a visibility standpoint. So with that, I'll be quiet and let you all ask any questions that we can hopefully answer for you.
Rohit sort of brought up a question on I noticed you changed the color, the standard color of the sign, the 7-Eleven. Rohit, the price board though, that is on the Newtown roadside, is that, it's in red, that's allowable?
The digital signage is not restricted by the color.
But the background on it.
Sorry. Let's see. Yeah, I see what you're saying there.
I have to, let me pull it up. Do you have it printed out there?
Yeah. Wow, that is a good point. Let's see.
Yeah, again, that's gonna sit up high and in the back corner, so, that's part of the visibility piece. I don't, that was
I
approved.
mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just-
that was approved, that was part of the whole text amendment discussion and was presented that way, so our impression is that that was approved in the text amendment process?
Yeah, let me see the wording of that text amendment. I think there might have been that exact picture included in the
And I didn't
zoning
focus on it
district.
until he
Right,
started
right.
talking about the colors.
And then there was the discussion about some of that is required per the
Yeah, I
state
remember.
and federal,
remember
law
that
for
way back.
pricing cabinets, so that may be part of the standard issue.
Oh yeah, but I just forgot them on the copier. Sorry.
But yeah, this was
Jeez.
part of that original
So
packet.
sorry.
Sorry about that.
Let's see. Page 30.
Because everything else was revised as requested.
Yeah. So
Because, and actually in your comments, Rohit, you said we had variance required, and you said we could take that off because it's already been approved.
right.
So-
Actually, according to the motion that was made, suggested by our attorney, to include that exact picture in the zoning district, that then pretty much allows you to have exactly that.
Okay, all right, well, that
Thanks.
answers that.
Yeah, that.
And then
does
sort of
do that.
And I'm not nitpicking, but, until,
Thank you all for coming. Have a good night.
is the ATM signage part of what was approved way back or something?
There's some ATM signage in here.
I mean,
Are we
I'm
doing
talking about,
signage
is
now, or
it,
are we doing?
is the external
Everything.
sign, quote, allowed?
I'm sorry.
Right. Well, I think that actually I think towards the very end. There's some ATM.
I mean, because it was, that stuff was really,
That-
which
I think-
predated
Right,
me on the board, but,
yeah.
it obviously was very detailed.
Stuff for Publix, I think.
Again, that may be the logo for that particular. And it's.
And I'm
I
not
think
questioning
it's there.
signs,
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's
items
turned
33 in
wrong,
front.
yeah.
but is it,
No. Item number 3 is just for the licensing signs.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hold on.
right, because we had to approve
Right,
that sign,
right,
and, because there were only so many signs
Right,
approved.
right.
And that's the reason.
Yep. And I don't think during sketch plan, I think all of it was approved in the sketch plan
Mhm.
process, so.
Right. So it was like a checklist there.
And
so-
when we did that, we had our historian here,
Oh,
Paul,
Mhm.
who was on board when it was originally passed.
Oh, okay.
He has since retired.
Oh,
From,
So you
yeah,
don't
from the
have
planning
that.
board.
institutional knowledge,
Oh, yeah.
as they say.
Yeah.
Right.
I know, it's hard to remember all these details. Yeah, I just don't remember that coming up.
It's the first I think maybe that we've seen.
Mm. That was original, that was part of the original text amendment package in the sketch plan.
It was?
package, Yeah. Mhm.
Are we waiting for something up?
Yeah, I'm looking something up. I'm trying to find where the.
Well, if you have any other questions or comments
Yeah,
while
please-
he's looking, let's,
please ask, 'cause-
please throw
keep
them
it
out.
going.
Yeah.
I have a question. There's so much material here. I do have a question about. There is, let's see, page 76. Our page 76, I believe. it's the short, it's like a 5-foot tall sign with the arrow, the 7-Eleven sign with the arrow.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that going to be?
Okay, one second. Let me open up the packet so I can be on the same page.
And why is it only 5 feet tall?
Is that the wayfair?
That's the directional, we call it directional sign, you have it as wayfinding, it's kind of
So
the same
that's
thing.
a separate line item or
Mhm.
discussion.
That's the next
That's
item
item
on the
3.
agenda.
That's the next item on discussion.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just going through all the.
Yeah.
all the-
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
I know, it's a lot of information.
Anybody else?
Do you know if the signs on the back listing the gas prices, is it even gonna clear the tree line?
I remember that conversation when,
Yeah, that's a
when we
question.
had
Oh,
the,
Lord.
I mean, I think we had a lot of conversation about that during the text amendment,
Yes.
uh,
And it-
request.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the issue, is why we had it up in the top corner, because you'll be able to see it very well in the winter. I'm not sure about when the foliage is out. Those are crepe myrtles, I believe, are they not, that are planted along there?
Over there.
I'm not sure. I can't think of the trees that are there.
Yeah, I think they are. But we should be able to see it, but it won't be, it won't look like a billboard. It's a small, it's not that large a sign, and again, it sits up on an elevation, so, yeah, those
that
trees are.
predates. That predates.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
this is
before.
affordable development.
Oh, they haven't flown that on Google lately. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's got like a old fence. That's not there anymore.
Yeah, none of this is here
Yeah,
anymore. This is
the
not
old house
useful,
is
sorry.
gone.
I have a photo that I took today if you want me to pull it up for you.
Google's about a year and a half behind.
I'd say they're a little farther than that behind.
I just know that my neighbor was selling his house the last time they did a satellite pass over.
Oh, that is old. The
Oh,
Yeah, this is all I have right now. Kathleen is getting us a picture, so yeah, we can look at it now. But yeah, I don't
anyway,
remember what trees-
any other
I'm sure
conversation?
I have some pictures too.
I actually have a picture and, let's see. Do you want me to email that to you, Rohit?
Yeah, that would be good. That'd be best. Regarding the bank question, it's a weird question because the ATM is like a separate use. There's the fuel station, and then there's the convenience store, and then there's the ATM. So that would lend itself to having different signage requirements, and I have to find those to tell you. But most uses don't have specific requirements. That's I guess the problem.
Well, I
with
wasn't
this,
saying requirement, I was more of an allow,
Right, and that's I think that's why this didn't really catch the checklist, is because the convenience store, like the 7-Eleven store, is allowed certain uses, and then the fuel station's allowed certain signs. But I mean, this ATM being in the fuel station or the convenience store is like a different use. There's like a list of like 3, now 4 signs that they're allowed, but this is a different use, which what I felt would fall under the general signage requirements, which is just like 32 square feet.
That's included in all of the calculations, I believe, though, Rohit, so we
Mhm.
didn't exceed that, right? So it's part of it, and again, it's on the upper corner and it's interior facing, so none of that on the front of the building you're gonna see from the streets.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Only
and-
if you're up in the parking lot and in there.
Right, the interior facing, that was a requirement
Right,
from us.
right. Rohit, I'm sorry, you're .gov now, not .org, right?
That's correct.
Okay, because I remember it changed, I couldn't remember. I'm sending you a picture if you wanna.
Thank you very much.
Ken,
thanks for coming.
Thank you.
thank you. it's in, I remember lots of conversations about the sketch plan.
Mhm.
And this is, I think, if memory serves me, pretty well in conformance with all of that conversation.
Right, like the materials, the landscaping.
And they're not requesting now propane and ice exterior?
Right, they're not doing that anymore.
Okay,
Yeah, we're doing ice interior,
yeah,
and Publix has got propane.
all right. So that eliminated that one, or the,
Right. I'll send this one to you too, Rhodey, because it kind of shows the fence that would line the edge of the outer corner, you know, where that retention wall is. I don't know that it was.
what? After all of the conversations during the sketch plan conversation.
Crickets.
Huh?
Crickets.
Yeah, yeah, crickets is all I hear now.
I mean, I do understand that's a lot of information.
There's a lot here.
There's
Yeah.
just, so there's so many pages, and, I mean, I've looked at it before, but it's, can you, to make things more efficient, faster, remind us exactly what we are needing to focus on at this moment?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Some of this is just way too far above my pay grade.
Right. I guess conformity, that's probably a good word with the land use plan, and any other ordinances that you think, you know, that should need to be given special consideration. This is a conditional district after all, so there's room for negotiations. But you know, like the conversations about signage are pretty good. Like if you want to talk about the signage in conjunction with the tree line, that's a good conversation to have. In any case, our engineer will also be making, you know, some of the more detailed remarks about the construction plan, but here, you know, you want to look at the layout of the site, you know, the location of the signs, the materials, the sidewalk. I didn't really mention, but there's going to be a sidewalk across the internal drive, which would make it contiguous with. It would make it a continuous walk on both sides of the road.
Is that on the landscape plan?
Um,
It might be helpful to pull up the landscape plan, because
Yeah,
that kind of highlights all of that, I
Right.
think, with the site plan. And Danielle Dancing from Kimley Horn is on the call. And Danielle, if you have any comments on that, you can chime in.
Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, Ravi, if you go to, I don't know the order of your plan set, but it's our sheet LP 101. That shows our proposed site plan in relationship to the landscaping proposed, and we have the existing, or when I say existing, what was planted with the Marvin Gardens Shopping Center versus the 7-Eleven as well. So it kind of shows everything on this parcel.
I mean, in general, you know, I would say again, like, going back to Kelly's question, like the faithful, you know, following through of the land use plan is here, you know, with the materials, like the big things are, you know, do you agree that their choice of materials and the layout, you know, matches Publix sufficiently and, you know, conforms with the, I guess, what do you want to call it, rural aesthetics of what the intention of this district was.
Do you have the materials for it?
I do, I
Is
actually
it
still have to
handy?
go get it. I'm
At least-
trying to think of a lot of things at the same time.
Now I know.
Well, I do have a question about the lighting of the signs. Looking at, is it like the lumens, the luminaire schedule. I know that the gas station has, particular hours where they have to be closed. It's not like a 24-hour situation. Which of these lights go off, or are the lights on all the time in the evening?
I think we had this discussion, didn't we, Rohit, about the lighting at the gas pumps? Because we were not open, but we talked about the fact that from a safety standpoint, they needed to, remain lit.
Yeah, I remember that conversation as well. I don't think that we actually ended up coming to a conclusion about like a text amendment, but
Well, we had the extended hours that was declined,
Right, right.
so.
and about the lights, hold on, I'm just trying to do a couple things at the same time.
So I guess my question, I agree with the safety issue, and I think turning them off is the right move, but, I do think that being at full power when you're closed might give passer-buyers the wrong impression that you're open, and then traffic will increase coming into that shopping center. So I don't know, having solutions for them as to how they can alert people what their hours are based on, lights on, lights off, lights at half.
That's a good question.
Well, if any of you have used Gas Buddy in the last week or so, many of the, on Google, when you were looking for gas, you either Gas Buddy or Google, and usually those hours are posted there. So it'll be pretty clear that the station's closed.
So, parking lights.
People are tech savvy. And if we're at my Rotary meeting, that would be false.
So, perimeter parking lights shall be dimmed by midnight. Lighting between midnight and 6 a.m. shall be reduced to a level which reduces glare while still maintaining a safe environment on the site.
Okay,
Is what it says in the regulation.
okay, there we go. Thank you.
Okay. In any case, this is not something that I can screen share. Materials board. Alright.
Doesn't work very well, does it?
I mean, it really does depend on the lighting and stuff, but I'm sure you guys are able to see this. Can you read the text on the board too?
I can't.
Let's see. I know you can. I'll show you the board specifically.
I like the white one.
Yeah.
Did they say chopstick or chapstick?
Yeah. This would have been better to see in person. It's just chopstick. Is water
Oh,
table.
really, just a chopstick.
Yeah, it did say chopstick. That's just the name of the
Paint color.
yeah, the paint color. Roman column is this like white matte color. This clear anodized is a silver, and it's shiny and it's smooth to touch. Fuel canopy fascia is this white, kind of feels like a little bit of popcorn ceiling, but it's also smooth.
Textured.
Yeah, it's textured.
Stucco-y, more like stucco. Look.
Are these
Membrane
Yes,
roofing
that's,
is
yes,
those
yes,
usually
that's,
are
yes,
not
yes.
matte material.
Yeah,
And then finally-
those images are accurate on the architectural drawings. That's what the
Yeah,
material
yeah,
board
yeah.
ties to.
There you go. And then finally, yeah, could I see that for a second? I'm gonna hold it up. Now this is how it all comes
It's
together.
in the package.
It's in the
This is in the
packet.
packet, so you'll see, these materials, correspond to the appropriate parts of this picture. Well, these materials and these stone samples.
Rohit, do not drop that.
Can't make any promises. All right, so these are the stones that they're looking to use. I'm gonna try to rotate it in different light because I know there's some blue light coming from the laptop.
That looks
itself.
a lot better than the rendering. The rendering has a pattern in it that just looks bad, but the rest of it, I mean, it looks nice. I think that it is in line with the land use plan for that particular area.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I agree.
It's gonna be one of the nicest looking 7-Elevens I've seen.
I think so.
That's what people are saying about the Publix too. I mean,
Yeah.
we really, I mean, the Village of Marvin really went around with that a lot, and eventually, what ended up getting built, people are saying that they're saying exactly that. Like, this is a really nice 7-Eleven. I mean, this is a really nice Publix. So that's what they're saying. Of
It's
course.
kind of like the Taj Mateater, the Harris Teeter, the Taj Mateater in near Uptown.
John, with that being said,
We need new nicknames for the Marvin standard.
John, with that being said, that this is gonna be one of the nicest 7-Elevens that we're gonna have, what are we doing? I mean, we're revisiting a lot of this,
Right.
we were for it then, we
Yeah.
should be for it now, we
Yeah.
should move on. I mean,
Yeah,
we're discussing the same things, we've already established what time the lights would be there. There's a lot of things we don't need to do. We
Yeah.
were for it then, we're for it now, I think.
and I see there's a lighting plan or
Photometric plan.
photometric plan.
Yeah.
Which, you know, the levels around the perimeter are real low.
Yeah.
So I think that they did a good job there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to answer, I guess, Michael, to answer your question, this is basically your opportunity to make sure that all the things that you did find, you know,
Yeah,
that were
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
yeah,
I liked it before, I liked it before, I like it now.
yeah.
Was it October we last all discussed this?
Yeah. Something like
All right.
that.
Any other discussion?
Okay.
So we need a
Make a
motion
recommendation to approve
approve
the construction plan.
as submitted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I will make the recommendation to approve the construction plans as submitted.
second?
Rohit, everything's in ordinance.
Yes. We did that at the sketch plan
Who was the
phase.
second?
Melinda
Melinda.
seconded.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Tom and I went through a really, I think he's not on the call anymore, but Tom was really instrumental. This was a very long and unique checklist. But he and I went through it all, and there were some things that were not compliant, and all were revised to be compliant.
Okay, let's vote.
Yeah, I think they're doing a very good
I do too.
job, meeting our requirements, so, again,
We
I
have-
think my,
We have a motion and a second on the
my motion's out there.
floor.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Okay,
Unanimous.
great.
All right, now,
Thank
that
you.
was, next is the,
wayfinding sign.
Wayfinding.
Yeah, so
signs.
directional
So-
signs is,
Yes, directional wayfinding. As mentioned before, the site sits up on a bit of a knoll. It's not super visible from either Providence Road or Newtown until you're into the site. So because you're almost coming up a little bit on an incline up on that, that little side road that comes in off of Newtown. I don't know.
Yeah,
It
it's
doesn't have
like a
name.
driveway.
It's
It
just a
doesn't have a
driveway.
name.
But because you're coming up into the site, you may not, as you're pulling in, you may not even realize there's a gas station until you get up in there. So what we wanted to try to do, because we don't have any signage out on the corner or out at the street, you'll notice from the photo I sent to Rohit that the sign is the sign for Publix that says Marvin Gardens. So we wanted to have something that gave some direction on where you pull in for gas, basically. And there's two curb cuts. So on the plan, we're showing the directional sign at the curb cuts, and they are low. I think, you mentioned they're only so many feet, whether it's
5
3
feet.
feet, 5 feet. So they're really just to provide some direction to show this is where you pull in for gasoline, so that people aren't kind of circling around and getting tangled up in the drive lanes and in the parking lot and interfering with the public's operations.
there's one at each driveway entrance, right?
Yes, I believe so. D, it's item D
Yeah.
on that plan, yes,
D.
yes, sir.
The one on that
Yeah.
entry street and then on the circumventual internal street. Yeah.
That's right. And I mean, just for reference, like our commercial signs are allowed to be, 32 square feet, and this is 6 square feet. So, and they're also not allowed to be more than, let's see, what is it? 4 feet tall, and this is 3 feet tall. So it would meet the.
Oh, it is 3 feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 3
The
feet
sign
tall,
itself.
it's 5 feet
Yeah, okay.
off the ground, but the
I
sign
gotcha.
itself,
Okay,
right?
Right.
Yeah, why is it that far off the ground? Is there any particular reason?
I think it's just because of elevation, because it's probably, I would imagine, I don't have Jessica on the call, but I would imagine it has something to do with if you're in a vehicle, if it's,
Yeah.
so it can be up enough to see it. at
Right, most,
eye level.
I guess the transportation engineering goes to say that the sign should be 2.5 feet, like your driver height level is like 2.5, 3 feet. So if you're looking at it, from the height of a seat of a car, that the below space is not useful to you. That's not area that, you
Right.
consider as visible.
I mean, we can consider lowering the sign itself a little bit if we put a base on it, but if we have it on as shown here, so I don't, we should make it more like the public sign out front, but we wanted to get some height on it so that drivers would see it.
And I guess if I go back here,
That's a good point. I would prefer the height. Again, you don't want, you want the drivers to be able to see it. I think that's a good point. If we could help me out one more time on the arrow, the green arrow on that sign, is that something you feel you need? Or is it so confusing people won't figure it out?
Well, it is a directional wayfinding sign, so we felt the arrow was important.
No, totally up to you. I mean, I think it just
Yeah.
looks better with 7-Eleven, but I'm not, if you feel you need an arrow to send people the right way, by all means, just from a aesthetics, I would, the arrow seems a little bit, but I'm not against it either. If you feel you need it, I'm fine with that.
well, I would, back to the why is it raised, there's a lot of ground cover type shrubbery in the landscaping. So if it was down much lower, it'd be down in it or below it.
Yeah, I think our landscaping plan has something
Yeah.
at the entrances there
Yeah.
too. So we're trying to mix signage with landscaping, so there may be some greenery around the bottom of that, so you won't see the legs as much.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it would be, I would feel bad for the people mowing to deal with those two poles. So these are also illuminated. And is that
Illumination.
allowed?
We do allow illuminated signs in this district. All it says is illuminated though, so let me read out to you the what's allowed.
Just as a side note, going back, I definitely think this needs some sort of landscaping around the base, or the base needs to be changed out. I do agree with the height, but,
There is a landscaping plan in your package. It shows both trees and also some sort of, can't read
yeah, I
it.
saw that, I didn't see it with the sign though.
Danielle, you had that landscape plan up a few minutes ago.
I can pull that up again.
Well,
It's
I just can't
It's
read
hard, yeah, we're trying to look at things
yeah,
in
so many
layers.
different things at the same time. Let me try to let's see construction plan. You said it was
Somebody share the page number.
the construction plan sheet was LP.
There it
LP
is.
101.
Whoa.
That's what I thought it was. Oops.
No,
Come on.
there you
come on,
go,
There
there
we
you
go.
go.
Okay.
Now, if you can zoom in on that, there you go.
Right.
It's a little hard. So right where we're showing the monument, there are some landscaping elements already on there,
Right.
right
So
at both corners.
sign would be
Yeah.
here and here. But it doesn't appear that there are bushes proposed in this area, right? Am I reading
Yeah,
that?
not in that one.
I think those
Yeah.
are street trees that are already
Right.
there.
Incidentally, the answer to the previous question, like are LEDs allowed? In the wayfinding sign section, it just says that the DRB will review wayfinding signs that are presented. So that would, in my interpretation, be up to you to determine whether the signs as presented, you know, are concurrent with the land use plan. Essentially, like, is that something you'd be fine with, or, you know, put limitations on, or not like to have the LEDs?
I remember that we had to review the public's wayfinding signs, I
Mhm. Yeah,
And
but those were not illuminated at all. Those were
I was gonna ask, but
right.
those were just,
Those are just, you know, retroreflective signs.
I mean, in terms of consistency, I don't, you know, it doesn't make sense to have some wayfinding signs illuminated and others not.
Yeah.
I would tend to agree there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason I brought up the public's.
Right. So it seems so far you'd want to see landscaping around the base of both of these signs. The landscaping plans, I would actually seem to think that they don't really have the bushes specifically around the base of these signs. So would it be safe to say that you would want to see those added? Like just
Yeah, I would say either landscaping to, they don't have to be completely masked, but just to mask them a little, or to just change the base.
Well, I was gonna say, or we could create a base instead of two legs and make it more of a monument kind of a thing.
Well, I think that would be more obstructive to view, though.
right, because
sign.
those are both at intersections. of
At
the driveways,
intersections where
yeah.
you're coming out, so that might have been, you
Yeah.
know, why, yeah, that's,
Mhm.
would make sense.
More material covering your way. But of course, like to be consistent, we're saying that drivers can't see below 2.5 feet
Right.
if they're driving, but even then,
Well, and if our lighting is all interior and facing inward, I can't remember, Rohi, are there street lights out there? If we, you know, removing
There are.
illumination, my question is, will they be visible at night?
right, there are lights along
And which kind of
the
defeats the
drive.
purpose.
There are lights along the drive, and like I said
Okay.
before, Publix had wayfinding signs, and they were just retroreflective, so you could see them because your headlights are shining on them.
Yeah. Is there some sort of lighting that we could have with them if they're not interior illuminated? Can we illuminate them exteriorly from the ground with ground lights or something? You know, I'm just throwing out
Right.
ideas that
That's-
might make sense for
That's up
everyone.
to the planning board again. This is a completely like open,
Right.
you know.
I'd be
Session.
more amenable to like ground up lighting than interior LED lighting. I feel like that's more consistent with the land use plan.
Yeah, I see that a lot more around Marvin. Of course, we don't see LEDs anywhere because it's residential, but that also proves the point.
there needs to be some sort of lighting on them, that's all.
Sure.
Interior or.
And then, so the other thing, of course, is to add some landscaping around the base. Is that something that would also, I would also say that this board would like to add a recommendation for?
Yeah, because then the light could also be hidden in the landscaping.
Yeah, that would be helpful there.
Okay.
Danielle? Is she still on?
Yeah, I'm on, sorry, I had to unmute.
Sorry. Based on this conversation, Danielle, exterior upward, spotlighting on a sign, can we place the sign locations onto the landscape plan and add just a little base of plantings around it?
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll coordinate with coming signage to make sure we have those exact locations.
Yeah.
And we'll work with our landscape architect to get all of that shown as you guys discussed.
Okay, and then maybe, we can just provide a little more detail on that from a landscape and sign standpoint for them to look at during the, I guess would you do that during the engineering room?
Yeah, that would
meeting,
be during the engineering
Okay.
phase. At this point, well, actually the design review board is it's in our ordinance that the design review board is supposed to see the final version at some point. So, let me go look at that ordinance real quick too, because that one's a challenge.
Well, can we have those notes and just make it subject to your review of the final plan or something?
Yeah,
we
let
can-
me check on the ordinance language before I say yes or no on that question.
Yeah, while he's looking, Danielle, my issue is really just with the two poles.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're painted like over time, if they start to chip, it just starts to look gross. So, I don't even think landscaping is necessary if there was a different kind of base. Like, I don't know if there's wood wrapped around them to make them look more. I don't know what the solution is. I'm sorry, I'm not, my designer brain's not on right now, but it's really just to make them look less industrial or like main street thoroughfare rather than, more like a neighborhood feel.
Yeah, we'll coordinate that with the signage team. And just to keep in mind too, because the green is coming over a little bit, there are sidewalks along that road as well, so we'll just have to keep all the landscaping out behind the sidewalks. But we'll coordinate that and can show something.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, it does look like it's weird the way this is worded. I'm gonna bring this over here because I want to show you guys how weird this is. Let's see. Site-specific and design plans shall be updated in final form prior to approval. However, in the event the design plans have not been updated to reflect conditions placed on those plans by the planning board and council, the zoning administrator shall ensure all design plans are revised and in compliance prior to issuing a zoning permit. So it says yes and no. I would say that you probably have enough time for, if the planning board today were to decide to approve,
Subject to.
subject to the conditions, there's plenty of time for this to come back.
And you could
And
review
to
it
look at this board.
administratively before the council
Right,
reviews
and
it.
then we can bring it back to the planning board just to make sure that that was what it was. The engineer will take, like I said, 2 to 4 months anyway. So in that time, the planning board can re-review it and determine if the revisions were satisfactory.
Danielle, when do you think you could produce some detail on those two signs?
If I can get the signage information in the next couple days that we can add to our plans, we can probably turn our landscape plan around within a week after that.
Okay, well, we're not really changing the sign other than to remove the interior illumination. Is that what we're discussing and doing exterior lighting instead? Is that what so I don't think there's any sign changes, are there?
The sign itself was not requested to change.
Yeah.
It was just the
just the-
landscaping
the
base
and
and
the
the
LED.
lighting,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so we can turn that around within a week. We do need to coordinate with the lighting vendor, so that might take a couple weeks, but we can at least have the landscaping updated to see it.
Okay.
This would go to council on June 8th, anyway. If you
Yeah.
wanted to get it on that meeting, you'd have to get it to me by, say, June 1st.
Let's see.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, let's just say that.
Okay, June 1st,
Yeah.
the signage detail?
Yeah, any revisions that were requested in this process.
Okay. Can do that.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments about these wayfinding signs then?
If there are no additional questions or comments, I'll make a motion to approve the wayfinding signs with the revisions mentioned.
Uh,
Final-
Yeah, I think you have to mention those revisions.
You can say.
So with the revisions of removing the interior lighting and considering a different type of base or adding landscaping around to mask the poles.
Okay,
Does that work?
Yes, and that works as the motion, and of course, not related to the motion, the applicant wishes to, I mean, not related, but it doesn't have to be in the motion, but the applicant wishes to revise that plan by having lights facing up on the sign, and that would, from my understanding, be reflected in your revised proposal.
right, in the detail, right.
Right.
Yeah, then maybe should we add that we are okay with that so that she doesn't have to get it approved a second time
I mean, with the
with uplighting?
uplighting.
Just add with uplighting at the end, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Okay, Austin's saying that he'll tack that onto the motion.
With
Okay.
uplighting.
And also,
Yeah.
maybe just to
Hmm?
either with that reflective,
With uplighting on the
expound,
sign.
Mhm.
removing the interior lighting and changing it to either a reflective sign, like Rohit was describing, or with a flat sign with uplighting.
Okay, that sounds pretty accurate.
Okay, so we can either do ground up lighting or just a reflective sign, but not interior illuminated, because we
Yeah.
have to run this through 7-Eleven, so I just,
Right.
I don't wanna say we can, you know, options are good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then if you think of anything else, just put it in there and we'll
We'll
vote
need a
on it the
second.
next one.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have a second? Michael, all in favor?
1 second, I got.
Wait a minute, let's get everybody's picture.
Okay,
Okay, unanimous.
okay, great.
All right,
thank you so much.
thank you.
We appreciate your patience and diligence in looking at all of this. I
Yeah,
know it's a lot.
yeah, it is, and appreciate your patience as well for sitting through the previous item.
Yes, it was interesting.
I have a question for Danielle, if you don't mind. Just a general question.
Okay.
Danielle, I'm up here in Connecticut. I just witnessed a brand new opening of a 7-Eleven. And it was kind of interesting to see. There's about 8 Tesla charging stations. I'm just kind of curious, in the design and building of this 7-Eleven, why did 7-Eleven decide not to put any charging stations at this location? Just curious.
Yeah, so this is in obviously Marvin, and I'm actually out of our Virginia Beach office, so I do sites primarily in Virginia and North Carolina, and there's different territories for 7-Eleven, so I actually have not done any electric vehicle charging stations on any of the sites in our territory that we represent. I do know in the Northeast, just because of the higher volume of those cars, there's been a little bit more of a push for that, so I do anticipate that coming down into our territory soon, but at this time, it's not something I've seen on any of the Seminole events I've done so far.
Okay,
Interesting.
thank you.
So hopefully in the future, that'd be awesome.
It's a great point, Robert, because I've seen a ton of Teslas around Marvin, so a lot of my friends have them.
Yeah.
And that addition, especially coming down from Providence Road, people going into the city, once everybody starts going back to work, having that addition. Rohit, if we don't have any ordinances around that, we might
No, we don't.
We might want to think of something before that, you know, we need to have an answer.
Yeah, I don't believe that we have ordinances about it. Of course, I didn't look into if there are ordinances in this Marvin Gardens district because they didn't propose it. But I also agree. I mean, in terms of just the general thinking of amenities for the community of Marvin and the area, there are a significantly higher proportion of Teslas in this immediate area. So that might be.
in fact, yeah.
Danielle could cut her teeth on Marvin.
Yeah.
Right, well, we can always ask the question, it's kind of interesting, is Robert still on the phone? Is he still on the call?
Yeah, he's there.
He's our
I
councilman
have to ask
liaison.
you, where in Connecticut, being from Connecticut myself originally, where in Connecticut are you?
New Milton.
Okay,
I'm actually I'm Cornwall Bridge, Connecticut.
oh, okay.
7-Eleven was in New Milton. New Milford.
New Milford, I was gonna say,
New
okay, New
Milford.
Milford, okay, on Route 1?
Let's, I hate to cut this short, but we need to
Okay.
move it along.
No problem.
All right, thank you. We'll ask the question, it's an interesting comment, so
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
ask the question. Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, discussion, consideration, text amendment. Because the guidance in the roadway median landscaping section to instead be regulation.
Oh man, I struggled with how to word that concisely.
I almost reworded it, but
If you wanted to, you could have, because basically all this is. Thank you so much, Kathleen. Have a good night. All this is to say that there are some. We actually talked about this, I think, in the past, and this is actually the time I'm proposing this text amendment. There are words in the roadway median planting ordinance that suggest
maybe, but I don't like
guide, etc.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
it. Sorry, side discussion.
Okay, that's fine. And this is from the manager's office. Those words should say regulate, and that ordinances should not have guidelines. So,
It's consideration of text amendment to alter the wording, guidance in quotes, in the roadway
Yeah.
median landscaping section to be phrased as a or termed as a regulation or something like that.
yeah, that sounds better. The title of the agenda item is not really that as important as the actual amendment, but for the council agenda, we might have to, reword
I'm
that.
teasing.
All right, I know.
Do we have that?
Yeah, so all
In
these
here?
text amendments are in here. They
It's
are
behind
gonna be-
it's behind all the Publix
Yeah.
and 7-Elevens.
It's gonna be behind, yeah, because I ordered it in the order of the agenda, not to group all the ordinances together, but just have it in order of agenda. So, I mean, I think you've looked at this before. There it is, John. Yeah, you
Yeah.
found it. So, but you guys have looked at this before, and all it is to change the words that say suggest and guide to regulate, but then there's also wording that says, if you need exceptions, then our engineer can look at it and let you know. With that said, is there, any discussion on it? Again, I think another question I was asked last time, this would only be for Marvin roads anyway, because we can't regulate DOT roads.
Well, in general, I would think that ordinances are not guidelines.
Right. Except if it specifically says this is a guide,
But-
then there's no teeth to it.
Yeah, that's the point being.
Right.
And so I would agree with that,
Okay.
just in general.
Right. Right. And that's where, Christina came from with that instruction. She basically this occurred in the Parks and Rec meeting, the PRG meeting, they were like, well, this is a guide, so we don't have to follow it. And that was like, Christina was like, no, we gotta change that.
Yeah.
So that's where that's coming from. So if there are no questions about the proposed amendment, could I get a motion for it?
Adopt the text amendment as presented.
Adopt as text amendment as presented. I'll make the motion since I second.
Okay.
Melinda?
Thank you.
All in favor? Unanimous.
I like short motions.
Yeah.
Kelly, is it just me, or do you look like you have a confused face? Okay. Maybe it's just
Sorry,
a lady.
that's my concentration face. It's
Okay.
resting being a
Next,
concentration
moving on.
face.
Okay.
So we picked up time there. All right, moving on. Discussion, consideration, text amendment to add small scale retail to the definitions.
All right. So this is another thing that is discussed by Christina to add. In a lot of conversations we've had, we talk about small scale retail, how we prefer it, but there's no real definitions in this definition section. So I just carried over the definition from our commercial district section and proposed to add it to the definition section. Do you like the definition of small scale retail as it is here? Predominantly being independent buildings.
Structure per lot or use that are 5,000 square feet or less.
Yeah. Any wordsmithing, any issues?
So a 7-Eleven is small scale retail?
No. 7-Eleven is probably going to be less than 5,000 square feet.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
It's
I can check on that right now.
I wasn't getting into detail.
Yeah, I know, but I forgot. I think it was like 4,000 something actually.
Yeah.
Let me go see that again. 3,465 square feet. 7-Eleven is.
Rohit, what, commercial areas maintaining one structure per lot?
Mm-hmm.
What would be an example of having more than one structure per lot?
Publix, that is one lot, and it has technically 2 structures. They call it 3 on paper. The Publix, the row that's attached to it, and then the row that's not attached are all on one lot.
Yeah.
So roads are considered structures?
No, I said row, sorry. Row. The one row of buildings that are not attached to it, and then the one row of buildings that is attached, but they're actually considering that a separate building. There's building 1, building 2, and building 3. That is all on one lot.
See, I mean, to me, that's a development, that's not.
Right.
I mean, all those buildings are not public, so.
Right. And then that would not be defined as small scale retail, even though they are, I mean, the Publix itself wouldn't be small scale retail. It says or in that, right?
What brought this up?
She wanted an example of what is not a structure on one lot.
No, I mean, what, the text amendment?
Oh, that was from Christina again. She wanted a definition of small scale retail because we talk about it so much.
Yeah.
I guess my question is really just, what is the benefit of talking about one structure per lot as opposed to talking about it another way? Like, I'm not saying it's wrong. I clearly don't know. So
right, and I think that really does. That example does really answer the question that small scale retail is not going to be a big development like that. Small scale retail does really kind of refer to some of the form-based code stuff that I'm going to talk about later, like where you have you have several individual buildings on a lot, like a lot. as opposed to having a bunch of buildings on one lot, which would be like a common shopping center.
So, let me ask you, if, because 5,000 square feet still feels bigger to me, but I'm just doing that based off my own, the square footage of my warehouse and office. So like if you were in Blakeney and the little, the little store there, like Bath and, not
Yeah.
Bath and Body Works, the
Right.
smelly place.
Bath and Body Works is 3,000 square feet.
Okay.
I'm using that one as an example, actually.
Yeah, I would, tend to agree that, my definition of small scale would be smaller than 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that it necessarily has to be on one lot, does it?
I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be on one lot.
You've got, and I guess it came up when we were talking, we're talking Heritage District, right?
Mhm.
We're talking small scale retails, but we use the soybean field on the corner. Venture. He may develop that whole thing, but we've got multiple, 2,000 or 3,000 square foot buildings scattered on it. To me, that would be what I would thought we were talking about, small scale.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Even though they're all perhaps on one parcel.
Okay, I hear both of these conversations. Like I said, I think I might need to bring this conversation back to Christina. What I'm hearing is, does it need to be one lot? Should it be smaller than 5K square feet? And I guess with those comments,
I think you need to bring.
I think we need to bring it back. Yeah. So, if that's basically agreeable, can I get a motion to table this item from someone?
Make a motion to pull the item.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kelly, I'll second.
Okay.
All right.
Vote.
Oh, yeah, all in favor, I'm sorry. Duh. Hey, Michael.
Melinda's? Oh, okay. I thought you were frozen. Your camera was frozen for a second. You're sitting real still. Okay, thank you. I'll take those comments back, and then we'll be back here anyway. Because as you probably noticed, the code reorganization is not in this agenda. Because I figure there's so many amendments that we should kind of tackle them separately. Tackle the amendments first, and then reorganize the code at once.
Moving along. Discussion, consideration, text amendment to clarify dwelling allowances in 151.049A and 151.054F, accessory uses and structures.
All right.
Which is what we sort of alluded to in the beginning of the meeting.
Yes. So based on what I said, and I'll try not to repeat myself, because we need to revise the definitions of dwelling units, most predominantly that a dwelling is 1 or 2 dwelling units, but we currently do allow attached accessory dwelling units, but we don't allow detached dwelling units. So basically, based on their definitions of dwellings and dwelling units and buildings, etc., I had to take a couple of sections and revise the language a little bit. So what we'll see in one principal building is that it does allow 1 dwelling, and it clarifies that attached dwelling units are allowed per the other section, 151.054, and detached ones are not allowed. Like I said, that is what we currently allow, and I just needed to change the language and clarify it. And this has been on our kind of what is it called, action item list for a little bit of over a year.
Yeah, I've teased Rohit about it.
Yeah, so, but it turns out that because the state's requiring these definitions, we just kind of have to adapt to it. And then in 151.054F, I have the definitions of accessory use, and I have the definition of dwelling unit, so that an accessory dwelling unit would be one that is clearly subordinate to the primary dwelling, allowed to be attached by special use permit, as is currently allowed, and that detached ones are not allowed again. So that clarifies. So the purpose, just to summarize, the purpose of this amendment is to clarify our allowances and adapt the language to be cohesive with the definitions that we're required to have.
Say that one more time, Rohit.
The purpose of this text amendment is to clarify what we allow in terms of dwelling units and dwellings and match the application of the definitions that we are required to adopt because of 160D. Is that good?
Where is the definition of dwelling?
That's in the consent agenda, item number 4. I keep using the wrong mouse.
I'm on page 150. I'm not scrolling all the way back up.
Okay, that's fine. I will pull it up. I'll pull it up for you. Don't worry.
And dwelling, that,
Hold on.
yeah.
Two people talking at
The
the same
reason
time.
that I'm asking is that you've got single family marked out, and I
Yes.
just want to make sure that because we really are talking about a single family home. Because if you take the single family out, you can have multiple families living in one dwelling, which is technically considered homelessness. So when you're doubled up, so I just want to make sure that we don't remove that language completely.
So, okay, I'm going to share my screen and then it'll be clear what we're talking about. So, this is way up in the beginning of the packet. And while I do hear you about, not wanting to have multiple families living in one dwelling, we can't have that definition. So it all comes down to the way that the house is built. Huh? Because the state is saying that we have to have this definition for dwelling. And so then it all comes down to we only really have the power to regulate what the house looks like. So if I were to submit a zoning permit, or someone submits a zoning permit to me, it's just is this clearly one place of occupancy? Yes or no?
And Kelly, there's a lot of us in Marvin that have mother-in-law suites with mother-in-laws and mothers living in our dwelling.
But
You're still family though. I'm talking about you know what I mean? I consider that family,
Okay.
extended family, even au pairs, that kind of thing. But just from I used to run programming for families in homeless crisis, and being doubled up, so 2 families not blood related in the same unit is technically one of them is homeless. So by definition, so I'm just surprised that they're forcing us to not be able to clarify. I know that's not necessarily a Marvin, something that's gonna happen in Marvin, but I mean, when you're talking about people trying to get into a good school district, 2 families, going in to lease a home, that could start happening.
Yeah, I mean, we allow that currently. I mean, up to 6 unrelated people can live in one house in Marvin. Yeah, so I mean, you could have your, 2 parents and 1 kid, another 2 parents and 1 kid living in a 4-bedroom house today. That's 6 people. I'm not sure that we have any, I'm pretty sure we don't have any ordinances defining that as homelessness of one of the families. But yeah, I mean, this kind of removes that from us. And even building code will, Union County building code will have some sort of regulations on the maximum allowed people in a building that can live in a building, but that would not fall on us to be the DNA police.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah. If there's, I mean, a 7-bedroom house in Marvin, you know,
You could fit some people in there.
yeah. And that's not an exaggeration, you know?
All right, thanks for the explanation, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know, that, hate to digress a little bit, that doesn't answer my question I had earlier, you know, because this is accessory dwelling, you know, the mother-in-law
Right.
suite.
Right.
As
It
long
does.
as-
It does say accessory dwelling unit on
Yeah,
it there, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, but I mean, that's, you know, and as long as it's attached, it's allowed in Marvin. I was
Right.
But
Right.
you also have an accessory building, which is the storage building out
Mhm.
back.
Right. And those didn't really get affected. No, that
I mean, by definition, I thought you deleted accessory building.
I deleted accessory use dwelling. Where,
Accessory use dwelling,
Yes.
okay, all right, then I misread it.
right, where accessory use is an still currently existing definition.
Okay, all right, I just misread it. So we're just talking about the attached mother-in-law suite.
Right. Where
Melinda.
well, since dwelling contains 1 or 2 dwelling units,
Yeah,
and a dwelling unit is a complete independent facility, we do allow accessory use dwelling units.
yeah,
Accessory dwelling units, not
As
like a
long as-
duplex.
as long as it's attached.
Right, as long as it's attached, we allow them by conditional use permit, and it's an accessory. It's specifically accessory dwelling unit,
Yeah.
as in, and an accessory is defined as subordinate to the primary use,
Okay.
so not a duplex.
Do we have a percentage, like the accessory dwelling unit can only be?
Yeah, maximum 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Okay, so you could have 1,000 square foot home and 1,000 square foot accessory dwelling unit. Why do we not allow modular if we allow mobile homes?
Modular, what do you mean by we don't allow modular?
Well, it says, single family residential district, 1 dwelling or 1 mobile home.
Mm-hmm.
What, I guess building method doesn't really have anything to do with, so someone can build a modular home.
Oh yeah, for sure. We don't regulate architecture at all. It's just that, from my understanding, the state, in not 160D, but previously and currently requires us to allow mobile homes, but nobody is proposing mobile homes in Marvin at this time. So.
But they're already existing, so.
Right, that's the existing language anyway.
All right. Do we need a
Normally,
motion?
the ordinance would spell it out, so that's why I was asking.
Right.
If you're ready, you can make a motion to either motion to adopt if you so wish. Adopt as presented.
Do we have a motion to adopt as presented?
Melinda, it's your turn.
Luke,
All right,
to adopt as presented.
second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor? Moving on.
Thank
Right.
you. Yes.
Consider to discussion and consider text amendment to remove large tract / small tract system of classifying subdivisions.
Okay, so this came from our consultant who did the code reorganization, and basically she found that the large tract and small tract are defined by being greater than or 10 or less than 10 acres, and then there's also major subdivision and minor subdivision, which is more or less than 4 acres or 4 units. Sorry, 4 lots, and those are, they overlap sometimes. They're redundant ways of characterizing developments, and there's no procedure related to large tract and small tract. There's just procedure for major subdivisions, but then they follow large tract ordinance, and then small tracts can also follow large tract. So it was all just kind of unnecessary. So I basically outlined in that ordinance 4 different categories of basically ways that we'd basically like just kind of pick out the definition of large tract and small tract, and like they are really unnecessary, with the only I guess substitute being that we do have a section that defines the large tract standards, but we've been colloquially calling it the conservation subdivision, and that is basically what I'm proposing the that type of subdivision standards to be called. A major subdivision could be, your 1 acre lots, or your conservation subdivision with the smaller lots but area conserved, and then that way there'd be no need to use the terms large tract and small tract. Developers get confused, I get confused, the regulations kind of overlap, so I'm requesting that you take those 4 points and as general, like the way that I'm proposing to basically swap out wherever it says major or large tract or small tract, swap it out with either major or minor or a conservation subdivision as appropriate.
It's altering confusing language.
Yes.
But you haven't written it yet.
I have written it
It's
not in here, but it's in I have a flow chart about it. There's like 20 or 30 different changes, but they're all just related to changing the term.
So we don't really have anything to vote on.
Sure. If you would like to just kind of consider it today and table it, I can bring the llanguage.
Hey,
Yeah.
it's confusing in discussing it, much
Mhm.
less without seeing it.
I was having a hard time following
Yeah.
you.
Right. Okay. Sure. So do you want to make a motion to table?
I move that we table.
Okay.
Seconded.
All in favor?
I'll second it.
Melinda?
Okay. Thanks. In general, though, would that be something you'd be in support of?
I think we're,
Okay. Like just cutting the fat, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. That is good.
all right, recap the previous Marvin Heritage District Strategic Plan Committee meeting.
Awesome. So, last meeting was really fun. For me, anyway.
You were dorking out.
I was. So, I presented the first draft, unfinished, of the form-based code, which is a different type of zoning altogether. As Michael has pointed out in previous meetings, Marvin Gardens is somewhat of it's a conditional district, but it leans on the style of form-based code, where in essence we regulate the architecture, the siting, and the uses, landscaping as well, and leave it to the stage of developers giving propositions in order to actually determine what gets approved, but with these regulations as the foundation for the discussion.
And it was, you discussed it at our last meeting, presented the early thoughts on it.
Right. In the
And
previous
then-
planning board meeting, I did show this board 2 sections that have been completed at that time, the building types and the district types.
Yeah.
After which now the conversation is much broader, because I've now finished streetscapes, the commercial uses matrix, the buffer matrix, to show that basically even within a district, you'd be required to have those transition zones based on that buffer matrix. It's what's allowed to be adjacent to what, pertaining to what's existing. And then, of course, the different uses are based on houses, like I did show you guys last time, but now I am actually looking for your consideration and recommendations of the comments. Essentially, the committee did really like what they were seeing. They saw the the concept that this form-based code would cause individual house-like buildings, large amounts of open space, and the areas bordering existing houses would be protected, and of course also based on the density of those existing houses. So the rural subdivisions would have larger lots required to be adjacent to them, and then the suburban subdivision, the preserve at Marvin, would have buffers similar to the buffers that they have, and then of course 100-foot buffers between residential and commercial. And then only commercial would only be allowed to be adjacent to residential on the suburban side too. So there would be no, like, the commercial parcels next to rural, of course, except for the two little parcels that we talked about. William Owens's bungalow here and TJ Philbrick's house. The question had been raised. So how are we going to make different rules for just those two houses because they don't have enough room to have a 100-foot buffer? Well, the answer that I've came up with is to put them in a separate district that would, on one hand, only allow the existing buildings and a far smaller set of approvable commercial uses, and on the other hand, allow them to have commercial uses next to residential without those big buffers that they would not be able to provide. And so that's it in a nutshell. Like I said, the committee was very amenable to the form-based code in general. There were discussions on different little factors of the code, and there's one discussion that did lead to an interesting kind of revelation that anything that I don't list here as required or prohibited can be proposed by the developer and discussed at that time. So it's not really even the end-all be-all of what is allowed, what is going in this district. That said, I hope you guys have had a chance to look at the form-based code as it is so far, and got a chance to tell me what you think about it, and if you have any comments about it. And lastly, I did get one proposal of the development of the residential node that would use these regulations. They did. It was Jones Homes again. They're really looking at this property in terms of what would be allowed. As we saw in April, we're not really going to regulate density at all. Of course, the open space buffers and lot sizes would be smaller than typical, but still come out to around 1 unit per acre. And we also did a calculation in that meeting where this residential node may have a little more than 1 unit per acre. The mixed use nodes may have a little less than, will certainly have less than 1 unit per acre. And in the end, there will be a handful less than 1 unit per acre, 1 residential unit per acre of the eligible areas for residential. So we were saying even out of 125 acres, 97 acres could have residential, and we actually are seeing, low 90s, high 80s perhaps in total residential units throughout the whole district. So still far less than 1 per acre overall, and the 30% open space requirement would result in almost 40 additional acres of public open space in Marvin. So a lot of good things are going on with this form-based code. I think I'm really proud of it. The committee liked it, council liked it, and I hope to have it complete by the next committee meeting for your consideration in the June planning board meeting, and perhaps I've also thought of the idea of proposing a joint meeting with the committee if you so desire, sometime between.
You're gonna have to help me
now and a few
wrangle
months.
everybody for a quorum.
Yeah. So that was a lot. I need some water. I hope I did a good job summarizing both the meeting. Oh, I'll get it.
I was gonna do it. Okay.
Just the meeting and the form-based code here.
And
I can hear you, so y'all can talk.
I think Kelly's the only one who was not, or is not a member, the only one tonight that is not a member of that other committee.
She's got her concentration face on.
But Michael, I don't think was there that night, right?
Were you there? I thought you were there last meeting, Michael. Were you?
There we go. No, I was not. I could not make it.
Okay.
Thursdays are very tough for me.
Yeah.
I wish we could change the dates of those. Thursdays are very tough, especially during the summer.
But
So one of the things, I'm gonna be honest, Rohit, I know you put a lot of work into this. May is my busiest month of the year, and so I almost didn't make tonight, so I have not had a chance to really dive deep into your material. I plan on doing that prior to the next meeting, but I did want to ask, I was gonna ask Mike as well, but he wasn't there. So Melinda, do you have any thoughts or takeaways from that meeting from a rural owner and a planning board member?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I think I told Rohit after the meeting, or no, it was at some point during the meeting actually, so I guess it's on the record, is that honestly, for the plan for what it is right now, I don't hate it. And I think as you all know, I'd probably be pretty honest if I did. I'm still struggling with your math, Rohit, and we can talk some more about that when the official proposal comes in from the developer. But I still don't, I'm not, the more I've thought about like the conversation we had, and I appreciate you doing the math, but I think that saying that it comes down to one house, and I know the goal, right, I understand that form-based code, we don't have like an R20, R40, R80, R20, whatever it is. I understand that, but I think that saying that we have 125 acres and that 97 of it is eligible for residential. So if we have 92 homes, then it's less than one house per acre. But that's not true if there's 70 homes on 47 acres. Right? So like, I don't really, I'm not quite buying into that. But what I do really like out of this new setup, Kelly, that helps me, I think, is that there's this concept of even if the pieces get developed individually, there is a visual cohesion that comes with this. And I'm still not sold on anybody wanting to walk in Marvin. And I got thrown over the proverbial and proposed bridge for saying that in the last meeting. But I don't buy into, and it's probably because like we don't walk down our driveway to get to our mailbox, right? And this is going to be across the street from these new homes.
hey,
We have
Melinda, at least I walk down.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
people don't even trick or treat in our neighborhood because we don't have street lights, so it's really dark and scary and there are critters everywhere, so.
There you go. I mean,
Yeah.
so part of me struggles with this idea of like what we're trying to become, right? Because I think that while I love the idea of having a local place to go and get breakfast on a Saturday morning and them know that one of my kids loves strawberries, the other one loves blueberries on their pancakes, and they make my coffee hot, like, we go to Saks when we're not in a pandemic, and they know that. I don't know that I need to have that up the road. Having said that, if this is the way that things are going, I am not against any of these people selling their money and developing or selling their property and developing it and making money, and I wish them all the best. But I just want to make sure that as we go forward, we don't do it at the cost of selling out what Marvin is to become Waxhaw, because I didn't choose to raise my family in Waxhaw. I chose to raise them in Marvin. So I think that that's our charge, right? And I view that on both of these. So I struggle with the density, right? And we'll just have to see but what I love about this new setup is that it is not Rohit, for a lack of a better phrase, it's not you coming up with the density. This is up to the developers, and the developers come and if they want to build a bridge, we'll talk about a bridge. If they want to build a tunnel under the road, we'll talk about a tunnel under the road. If they want to put in a teleportation device, I guess we'll discuss that too. I mean, I don't know how they really turn. There you go. I don't know how they turn Marvin into this ideal, but that's not what I do, and that's not why I joined either of these committees, was to do that, right? I'm not a developer. So I think that it went really well. I think we had good discussion. I think that the idea of having true cohesion in and amongst the Marvin Heritage District, I think that's what, if we're gonna have it, we need that, right? So we'll see.
Thanks, I appreciate that. One of the points that you made is also concerning to me. From what I like, when I scan the presentation, I like what I'm seeing in the bits that we've already discussed. There are a couple pictures I'd love to switch out because I'm just like, ooh, if someone built that, I wouldn't be happy. But I'm just an architectural snob, so.
Okay, I mean, feel free to point it out because, I mean,
My main point is this. Those are just, minor things. What is concerning to me about the idea of taking a mass amount of land that are technically multiple parcels and then assigning a density to the whole thing and then developing them individually is what happens if we allow, with the assumption that, only 97 homes can be developed in this large plot, this large district. What happens when we allow one developer to come in and do a higher density development, and then, let's say someone down the road who also has residential, they want to do, they don't want to do a park or whatever it is. They don't want to abide by, they want to get their money out as well. So then they're going to ask for, at minimum a by right, which then puts us over the amount of homes in there. We can't hear you with their hand.
That's exactly where my mind went. I was thinking about the pond in their backyard, which I think I've told y'all has really mean fish in it. And I was thinking about like the wetland area where there's supposedly a tractor or a bulldozer or something stuck over here in either the Priebus or the Odell property. But when we talked about the hardship today, right, that's exactly where my mind went, because I was thinking about like these other places and what it means then, and if we allow this, and I don't know the history, but my job is to vote the way I see things today, and that's where my mind went with that, right, was this idea of, yeah, if you let these people have this, and then you let these people have this, and then do we have to let those people have that? I mean, like, it's a slippery slope. I absolutely hear you.
So Rohit, I think, kind of moving forward, I would love to hear an answer to this, not necessarily tonight, but like, how are we going to stop, people who want to develop their land later on in the process from trying to get the same thing that someone has already cashed in on in a way? Do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
And then, they're like, well, I didn't agree to that. I didn't sign any paperwork. I want by right, or I want more. And then, do they then turn around and sue us because we gave it to somebody else and we didn't give it to them? Like, I don't know if that's even a possibility, but I always try and think worst case scenario, so that, and you work back from that.
Yeah, I mean, my first answer to the question is kind of that I've done I guess conceptual reverse engineering of the lot sizes and buffers and park space to kind of estimate that the density would ultimately end up around 1 per acre, even if everyone kind of maximized the yield on their property based on these regulations. So there's another answer that is, we could actually add some lines in there that explicitly cap the number of residential units in this district, but then that kind of goes against the idea that form-based code doesn't regulate density. Then finally, the idea that how can we stop someone from going back to what was by right is that when we remember when we talked about the type of district that this is, I specifically mentioned that having this be an overlay district would allow someone to do a by right development, and thus I recommended a rezoning instead. And after a lot of conversation, you guys agreed with that analysis. And so that was what I thought of back then, which is that there are things in the R zoning that would be by right that we wouldn't want to kind of throw in the mix of what's allowable.
I guess my question is, how are you going to ensure that these park areas, open spaces happen over time when development is slow and goes at a slower pace? Like,
right, it would have to be required at the time of that property being developed. Like, it's not like 30% across the district means that, oh, I'm banking on that 30% being somewhere else. It's more like every development proposal would have to have 30% of that property or tract be open space.
right, but it doesn't, 30% of open space can be an area that not everyone is, it's not open to the public, right? So,
Well, that's why I've included that it must be open to the public to count as that 30%.
Yeah.
Buffers wouldn't count. Not accessible wetlands or other environmental areas wouldn't count. Private area, like private parks, wouldn't count. And then I think in another memo, not the one that I've presented today, I did start outlining ways I feel like would be apt to define those. Like a wetland could count if there was a wetland trail network through it. A lake could count if you were allowed to fish in it. And a
Catch and release.
Catch and release, right. And a viewshed buffer could count if it was an activated plaza and not just a tree buffer. Things like that. So there definitely is, in a section that hasn't been written yet, but there will be provisions to make sure that one, every property or tract is responsible for that 30%, and two, that that 30% is actually, usable public space in the way that, it's been brought up so many times in the conservation subdivision. Well, if they're conserving wetlands, they weren't going to build on it anyway, and we're allowing them to squeeze more houses in an area which is of course by right, like this one here, but that conversation is addressed by making that 30% requirement public open space.
That brings up something that, hadn't even, somewhere along the line, do they need to be interconnected?
Well, yes.
Let's say we couldn't get back in the back corner
Mhm.
of previous property and create this nice park for them, but nobody from Marvin can get to it.
Right. I mean, they have to be publicly accessible, meaning like you could either drive back there, or you could walk back there. I mean, it's not going to be one 40-acre expanse of park in the end, but I mean, there are going to be some 10, 15-acre.
Yeah, but they all need to somehow ultimately be interconnected to the greenway.
Yes, that would be a requirement. Like that, there's a requirement that all of these areas must be connected by walk and by drive. Like there's no gates, right? So a park in the middle of a development, like the wetlands in the back of Scott Lett's property would have to be accessible. You would have to be able to drive up or walk up to it, right? If that's
like I said, someone could say,
And
well,
that's the horses off. You're gonna spook the horses.
that's a good point. I mean, that's what the buffers are for, though.
Anyway.
Yeah, but if you're saying a buffer is an activated zone, like, my neighbors would really not be happy with having an activated buffer, you know.
A view shed buffer is what sorry to interrupt. View shed buffers could be counted. View shed are in the front. Rear buffers could never be counted as the open space. They cannot be activated. They have to perform the function as a buffer.
So thanks for that. The one that I would say that, and if it's in here, I'm sorry, it's just my.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm sure that this is a challenge to read, as you know. So feel free to ask any questions.
Reading those construction plans for.
Yeah, that's the point of a form-based code. It's so much easier to read.
So my suggestion would be, if it's not already somewhere in there, is that we offer solutions or opportunities for these activated areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if a developer comes to us, they see all the things that they can do in terms of housing, but we're not giving them what's the potential for an activated view shed buffer? You know what I mean? It could be, you know, on the greenway, there could be a reading trail. There could be, you know, those natural logs that create different kinds of playground equipment, or like, you know, there's all kinds of cool stuff that you could do to inspire them, so that there is an actual benefit to us, and not just some, like, you know, that's what I do when I can't cut in front of my children, the half-a attempt to, like, make a, you know, a public space. Because public space.
Hold on, Kelly.
You muted.
Yeah. I think you cut out there for us. So give me a sec. You didn't hear them cut out? Okay.
We did.
Yeah, give it a second then. Let's see. Sorry.
They can hear me?
Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay.
It just came back.
Yeah, sorry.
Alright, so my whole point is that this 30% spaces is an opportunity for us to offer a benefit to Marvin neighbors, to bring connection when so many of us go home and we stay in our homes or stay on our own property, and we don't really, like, I've never met my neighbors, on either side. Now I've got 4 acres in between me and my neighbor, but, you know, we really do have an opportunity to do something special with these open spaces, and I just want to make sure that we are offering up opportunities, you know, examples, inspirations, potential developers.
Perfect. I'll add some language that enforces that. Like, I have a draft. It's not in this packet. That was the first thing that you asked. It isn't. But I didn't want to include half completed sections because I feel like that could be dangerous. So I try to complete as many sections as I could, and then leave the other ones just like we're working on all of them. But yeah, so one, I can definitely include some language that enforces that, and two, like I said before, we realize in a form-based code that anything that's not required or prohibited is up for discussion at the time that developer is proposing something. So that's already kind of baked in the idea that something could be negotiated, and the opportunities for recreation, like the types, could be brainstormed and innovated. I like it. Love it.
Well, I'd be happy to be your creative ambassador because that's in my wheelhouse.
Thanks.
Anything else?
From my perspective, I mean, like I said, I just hope that you guys get a chance to, now that I've given you somewhat of a background, maybe you have more of an idea to kind of look out for certain things, and also that, to realize that, even with the smaller lot sizes, but with all these buffers, the density works out to something that will be very fitting for Marvin. And finally, I hope that you guys look at the committee packet that goes out sometime in the next 2 weeks, probably towards the end of 2 weeks from now, to look at that packet when it goes out, so you have a whole like 2 weeks to kind of explore the final draft of this form-based code, because seeing such little like opposition to it in concept, you know, we really just kind of quickly got right down to the details, and seeing not really that much opposition to details. I mean, I have all the notes of the things that you want to address, but the timeline was originally stated to have like a June, July adoption, and we're still kind of looking at that. So July, whatever the first council meeting, the date is in July, is looking to be the possible adoption of this district. So like all that means to say is like, keep your eyes open for, you know, the final draft, and make sure you get me all of your opinions anytime too. You know, email me, get with council. Like Melinda came to a coffee with council one time. It was really good. So yeah, that's all I have to say about it.
When the draft is ready and you send it out, can you in the subject be like, must review before blah, 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 you know?
That's an action item.
Put it in our face. Get it in our face so that everyone knows. They don't have to open up the email to know they've got an action item.
All right, but I can't be too
Must
obvious
review.
about it, because then it'll go to your spam folder.
Okay.
But I hear you.
In the subject line.
Mm-hmm.
We finished?
I mean, yes,
With
I
that.
think that's all I have to say about it. That's
All right. Action items.
I yield the balance of my time.
all right. Well, there's a lot of things that happened. I got a few tabled text amendments that I need to flesh out and bring
Okay,
back.
Rohit will flesh out, was it two?
Two table text amendments. We're gonna make sure that, you know, council hears the negotiations that were discussed in the estates subdivision. Specifically the motion, and let's see, construction plan passed, there's no action items there. Bring back the revised wayfinding signage item, and I hear you're wanting to make it very obvious in a subject line. Send it to you as soon as I've got it about the final draft of this zoning district. In addition to the other,
See, I knew you'd say it better than I could.
yeah, other mentions of comments from today. And Kelly, do at some point tell me what architecture you don't like and why, because I'm always looking for.
Some of it's just like really like all the brick homes. It's like we do have more, you know,
Yeah.
various architecture. So
Well,
Yeah, there was a conversation to remove that
Yeah.
Marvin vernacular type home and just stick to the kind of the more specific Southern colonial Charleston, you know, cottage bungalow type of vernacular. That's kind of going to be discussed at the next committee meeting, but we might remove that section altogether.
Where it started going off
Yeah.
the rails.
Yeah, I don't really want to go too much into
Yeah.
that. Basically, the summary was that we were going to remove it, and one person didn't want to, so we tabled that discussion to next week, and we'll probably have internal conversations before that.
Week
meeting.
after next.
Yeah. Sorry, next committee meeting.
All right.
Did I say next week?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Yeah. So those are the action items, I guess.
Board member comments. Kelly?
no, I appreciate all your hard work and thanks to Mike and Melinda for being part of that committee as well. And the only other thing is, I'm just concerned as to why so many people are not showing up for our meetings when.
I'm going to speak on that in just a few minutes.
Okay.
I've never missed a meeting, by the way. Pat myself on the head.
Melinda?
No, just thank y'all for
All
Great work. Always good stuff.
right. Michael?
No further call. I mean, I think we'd be careful on judging people for not being here. I know Kent, his daughter was graduating from Ivy at Marvin High School, and I think that's very important. And people have, you know, certain areas where they have to take care of, but let's be thoughtful before we judge.
There was no judgment, Mike, just wanted to make sure that people are showing up. But there's just been one absence every now and then. It's totally understandable, but like if people can't commit to the time, then, you know, this might not be the right setting. But there's no judgment.
I don't have anything additional.
Bob's on there.
You want,
Let Bob go
all
ahead.
right, Bob, any comment? Are you awake, Bob?
He's probably got to unmute.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, no comments by Bob.
I'll keep this brief. It has been more difficult recently to make sure we have a quorum for these meetings, and that takes a lot of staff time to make sure that enough people are going to be here to actually carry out the business of the board. So if I email you guys a quorum check, just please respond. That really helps me out in what I do. We do have an attendance policy for the village. If you miss 2 consecutive meetings or 4 meetings within 6 months, I'm required to notify council of absences, and at that time they may choose to take action. The only reason I bring this up is that more than one member is in violation of this policy at this time.
Hey, Austin, just as an FYI, when your predecessor used to, when we were emailed, only asked us if we were not going to be there to respond. So it might also be that people are. It's a different ask now, and they just might not realize.
I was doing it that way initially, but I was instructed to change it to confirm your attendance no matter what. So.
That would be one way to know whether people read it. Yeah.
Barbie also did read receipts.
I sometimes do, but they don't always work.
I see.
Okay.
I'll keep. Oh, and one other thing. As you know, the COVID-19 restrictions are being rolled back slowly. Once the governor repeals the state of emergency, all planning board meetings will be in person. We will no longer be authorized to meet virtually. That could happen as soon as June 1st. We're not sure yet. But once that happens, I'll let you guys know.
Of course, I think it was already a policy before COVID that up to 2 members could attend virtually if needed.
I'll have to review the policy. The virtual attendance policy looks like it only applies to council in the way it's written.
Oh yeah, okay.
I'll double check though. But
well, yeah, check on that in case. At least there's some leeway if people don't want to come. Also, I think that might be a good opportunity to say, would we continue to do virtual, like, public, attendance?
That's going to be up to council to decide whether they want to live stream all meetings, or on YouTube keep doing WebExes, or roll it all back. That's going to be a discussion they're going to have relatively soon, and I'm going to have to get ready for. So.
Okay. Well, somehow we survived.
Oh Lord, it's been a heck of a year.
Bob's wife texted me and said, "He's trying to speak. Can't you hear him?" I said,
"No."
Oh, he's got the little yellow
he's got
bandwidth symbol.
He's in Connecticut. He has no reception.
Yeah, you have no reception. Yeah, no reception there.
Yeah.
Nope, can't do anything.
If Bob needs to speak, he can call me. Bob, you can call my phone if you need to speak.
How much time are we going to give him to do that?
Give him 60 seconds. But
okay. Oh my gosh, these stones, man. Oh, they're so heavy.
He's trying.
He can't
even get a cell signal.
Oh,
maybe.
Well, we'll leave it.
Can I move to adjourn?
Yeah.
Yes. 9:30, and we'll need a second.
Second, Melinda, all in favor? We're adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Y'all have a good night.